All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listener. Good afternoon, Nick. My name is Claudia. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C. From the Swiss Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Nick Barrett accepted our invitation to our show. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Yes, hello.
Hello, how are you? Nick, let's go back to the beginning. Were you born in a musical family? And how old were you when you perhaps began taking, I don't know, guitar lesson or piano lesson at the time?
Da, 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 da. I was born. Um, not really into a musical family, apart from my mum was very musical, and she played the piano. But she used to play a lot of music. There was always music being played. She always had the radio on. I can remember she's always playing Rimsky-Korsakov, Scheherazade. It was one of the first pieces of classical music I ever heard, and Dvorak's New World Symphony. But she used to play a lot of the radio was always on, so I was always hearing the Beatles, the Tremolos, the Rolling Stones, all those kind of bands. And I think that is what probably really got me into music.
I got you. And you have any older brother or older sister that they will buying records or bringing records to the house or vinyls at the time?
Yeah, I mean, it was my. I think this is quite a standard thing. People seem to have an older sibling that you know brings records to the house, and I think it was my oldest sister got into pop music, so she would bring Slade albums along home, and through that we got into Slade and T-Rex and the Sweet, and all those bands. But I mean, also, I liked a lot of pop music. Stuff like Rod Stewart, Maggie May, You Wear It Well, and Alice Cooper, Schools Out. I mean, all those songs. The early '70s. We had little radios that we used to tune into Radio Luxembourg, and we would hear all that stuff and you just love it. I mean, it was fantastic. You just couldn't get enough.
Got it. Got it. In any band in high school when you were, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, eventually you will listen to a
Yeah.
lot of music and I suppose you talk to some of your buddy, hey, let's form a band, let's play some, let's do a little bit of music during the weekend or something.
Well, yeah, we were all guitarists.
Got
Nobody
it. Yeah.
wanted to be the bass player because the guitarists were the ones that got all the girls.
That's
So
right.
that,
That's
that,
right.
that's the way it worked. Of course, there was one guy who he was fairly driven, guy called Pat Luckett, who was a drummer. He was a guitarist, but I mean, obviously, it didn't work for him getting any girls, so he turned his hand to drums. And um, there was another guy called Keith Gully on guitar who was very good. If he'd carried on playing, he probably could have become professional. And I don't think at that stage we had a bass player, so it's just two guitars and drums. I think we may have had a bass or someone singing. I don't really remember, but yeah, we started this band. We decided to call it the Rockets, and we only played a couple of songs. I think we played Hound Dog, Elvis Presley Hound Dog, and we just played them at school. And I think a youth club we played literally twice, and that was it. That's the only band that I was in before Pendragon.
I got it. Person. And then eventually you guys got together, start as a Pendragon started playing chord version of classic rock like I don't know Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Fleetwood Mac, Santana, that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I met a guy called Julian Baker outside of my school who was a really bad influence because he said, "Oh, maybe we should start a band." And he would keep saying, "Hey, there's a guitar going, in the music center for £40. You've got to get it. It's really good." So I saved up and I bought this guitar. It was like a Gibson Les Paul copy, and I joined with Julian. We got a guy he knew in called Nigel Harris, and a bass player he also knew outside from another school called Stan Cox. And yeah, we had a 4-piece band, and we used to play cover versions of Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin, rock and roll Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, Voodoo Child, Johnny B. Good, Samba Party, Santana, Fleetwood Mac, Bad Company, all those songs. But then it got into a point where after a while, I really started to like progressive rock. I'd heard Dark Side of the Moon very early on. That was an album. My sister brought a couple of albums home. One was Dark Side of the Moon, and the other one was David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Wow. Both utterly phenomenal albums. I mean, I couldn't, the Dark Side of the Moon thing was, I'd never heard anything like it. I mean, it was otherworldly. It still is. I mean, when I hear it now, it sort of takes me back to, there was a sound and something about it which was incredibly special, and it had that kind of atmosphere that I really liked. But I still liked rock music, and then later on got into, Genesis, Camel, and more Pink Floyd. And I really then wanted to make the band go in that direction, because I really liked the sort of keyboard stuff of Tony Banks. And so then we got in a keyboard player called John Barnfield, who I started writing a lot of material with, and we got on really well. It was brilliant writing with Barney. And, then it became a prog rock band, really.
Any at the time, I assumed you ended up making the decision, well, I don't want to go to university, the uni, like you guys call it, or I want to be a professional musician or get another job. Any pressure for your family in terms of, hey, go to university, forget about the music, you're not going to make any money, it's a difficult lifestyle, and so forth, or not? Or
no, were free I went in to see my dad and said, look, I've got something to say, is that look, I don't really want to go to university. And I don't want to work in a bank, and he said, fine, do what you want. I had to have my goal and my dream, and their goal and their dream was in their life at that. And I think this is the same with a lot of young people. You have to lead your life and have your own goal, not your parents' goal.
Absolutely, yeah.
You're the guy that has to live it for the rest of your life. So, like I said to my son, just find something you like doing and get someone to pay you for doing it, because that's the best thing you can ever have. And so my parents really weren't. I mean, my brother was very academic and my sister was very academic, and they really encouraged them, to go down that path. I think they kind of thought more I was a bit of a lost cause, rather than go and do what you want. I think it was a bit of, we don't know what he's going to do. Maybe this will transpire over time. So I was kind of like left to get on with it, really. They were neither kind of particularly encouraging or particularly dissuading of it, which is good, because it left me to find my own way and find what I needed to do to fight to become a musician.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. How difficult was, if you can take me back to early in the beginning, your first tour? I know you ended up touring with Marillion at the time, but just getting to that stage to get Marillion, I mean, you were playing, you didn't have a record deal yet, so you were playing a small, small places, and eventually somebody saw you and they say, well, what about opening that for Marillion? You know who Marillion was at the time, or?
Well, we started in 1978, and we were playing as many shows as we could get. But, people weren't interested in booking a prog rock band. There was disco in 1978, punk rock, and then in the 80s there was heavy metal. I mean, we played at places which were completely inappropriate. We played this place called Redditch College, where, loads of punks and skinheads and bikers turned up, and just students. and they didn't really like it. There was about 20 looking hippie type kids down the front who liked it, but everyone else hated it. And we played a lot of shows outside where we lived that were terrible. But we played shows because of my brother, got a lot of people along to our shows where we played locally. A place called the New Lodge in Minchinhampton, and the Marshall Rooms in Stroud, where we started, was very, very good. We had fantastic shows there. But as soon as we went out of the area, we didn't get on very well. It's probably because my brother got a lot of people along to those early shows, and they were enthusiastic because we were local and they knew us. But in 1982, our manager said to me, "I've heard that there's this band called Marillion who are going to be on the Friday Rock Show," which was a very big radio show in the UK at the time. A guy called Tommy Vance from BBC Radio had this show on a Friday night and used to play all this rock music. And our manager said, "You should listen to it because apparently this band Marillion sound like, the Genesis kind of prog rock thing." Oh, wow, what this is unbelievable. So I listened to it and I thought, wow, it's really aggressive. Because Fish had this really kind of aggressive approach, and I could see that this could become popular because it kind of bridged the punk thing attitude with the more gentle side of the music. So it kind of cleverly married those two things. Anyway, a few months later, our manager was a promoter as well, and he put on a gig with us supporting Marillion at a place called Gloucester Leisure Centre. And he said to us before we did this show, he said, "Make sure you get on well with them. Don't overrun your set, go on stage on time, be respectful because they're the main band." And we were. And as a result, we got on with them really, really well, particularly Mick Pointer, who's still a great friend of mine. And we did that show with him. And he said, "Do you want to come and do a show with us in London at the Marquee Club?" Which was an incredibly famous club. And we thought, we'll never hear from them again. They're just saying that. Well, 3 weeks later, the phone rang and it was their manager, John Arneson. He said, the guys have asked me if you want to come and play the Marquee, in 2 weeks' time. And which was terrifying, but absolutely life-changing. And from then on, we were able to then start to make an impact on the touring scene.
Yeah, Marquee. I think a Marquee doesn't exist anymore, but it is a very famous club, right? Many bands were aiming to play the Marquee Club, right? Because
everyone, you could play anywhere and it was sort of okay. You play at the Marquee, it was unbelievable.
It
was absolutely incredible. And of course, bands like The Who and Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton, and they all played there.
At the beginning, yeah.
Really
how many people were attending the show? Like 500,000 people?
Yeah. I mean, 500 in the Marquee was absolutely jammed in like sardines. And the thing about it is because it was painted black and there were no windows, everybody would focus directly on the stage. And the venue was sort of long, not deep. So everyone was sort of fairly close to the stage, and the ceiling was low, so the lights were close to the band, and the heat was tremendous. And because of that, the atmosphere would just be phenomenal.
Got it. So, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, when we supported Marillion, there's a kind of a door at the back which opens, and then you have to go out, and the heat hits you like stepping off a plane into the desert. It's incredible. And then go on and play. And I looked out the audience. I thought, oh my goodness, we're going to die. These people don't know us. We were very used to having quite a negative response from a crowd, but they just absolutely loved it, and we couldn't believe it. And then Marillion came on, and it was just like another level. I mean, I've never seen, the whole audience were jumping up and down right from wall to wall. I've never seen anything like it. Fish, had this grease paint on. It's 6'6", Scottish. The impact was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah. Wow, man. Good for you, man. So the show ended. You guys went home and said, man, what do we do from here? Because you were playing, small places, college stadiums, college venues, and then all of a sudden the Marquee Club, and you were no record deal yet. People got to know you a little bit and the band, and what was kind of the motivation, the strategy to take that to the next level for Pendragon point of view?
Well, the thing is that, from 1978 to 1982, we played, it was clubs as well, these clubs and pubs and, really not very good gigs. But when we met Marillion, who was starting to pick up some interest from the press, so magazines like Kerrang and Sounds were starting to write about them, but then they started to write about us. And we went back to the Marquee and played again with Marillion. And then as a result of that, we managed to get one or two other shows at places like, there were rock clubs dotted around, I think, in Guildford, Angie's in Wokingham, those sorts of places, the Penny Farthing in Oxford, loads and loads of small rock gigs. And then it just sort of escalated from there. We were able then, because people could read about us. So, we did a couple of tours of Scotland and, people even as far away as Dingwall, which is right at the top of Scotland, or as far south as, Southampton, a few people would have heard of us. And because they liked the old Genesis and Camel and Pink Floyd, so they read about us in the press and they come along. So it wasn't a massive crowd, but that's how we built a following, just doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these gigs.
Yeah, were you guys making enough money, kind of survive, or you were still living at home, or you?
No, it financially it was shocking. I still had a part-time job on a farm because I was a cowman. I used to milk cows and used to drive a tractor. But we used to do things like we play in Leeds, and we had this van which had some seats in the back. It was like an old laundry wagon, a real crummy old van. Really not great. But Barney, our keyboard player, put some seats in the back so we could just about fit in with our road crew. We would drive to Leeds and do a gig and then drive home. And I'd just go straight into the farm to milk the cows, without going to bed, without going to sleep. That happened many, many, many times. And, we had no money. And then, our manager would say, we've got to go and do these gigs in Wales. They're prepared to pay, £80 or something. It'll cover the fuel, and we'll have £10 over. We can go and buy some posters, and that's how it was. And a lot of the guys were still at their jobs. A couple of the guys had signed on the dole, which is Social Security, but even that couldn't last very long because it's very difficult to claim dole money, Social Security money, if you're not available for work. So you can't really go off on tour. And in the end, we had the fraud squad came around there because somebody thought, hey, these guys, they must be earning loads of money going off doing all this touring, and they're claiming Social Security dole money as well, which is a very small amount, like £20 a week. But fraud squad guy came down. He said he looked at all our manager had some sort of accounts and stuff. He looked at these. He just said, "I can see that you guys are just broke.
Absolutely.
There's no fraud going on here. You guys." It's very hard for people to understand why you would do that for no money, for nothing. And we did it because we believed in the band. We believed in doing music. It's what we wanted to do. From the time I left from the time Pendragon started until I could actually pay myself a small amount of money was 12 years. That's how long the apprenticeship was.
Wow, 12 years. It would have been very easy for you guys to, give up and say, "Now forget about this, man. I met this girl. I want to marry. I need to get a job, buy a house, or whatever." But you guys, stick to it. Stick to it. Some people, came and gone. Different drummers, different, people coming and going the band. But you guys were persistent, consistent, and little by little start, aiming
We wanted
new
to.
grounds.
The thing is, me and Clive used to go for a cup of tea down at this cafe. We make one cup of tea last all afternoon. And we used to say, look, we were angry. We used to say, oh, yeah, I'm really, we can't carry on like this. This is ridiculous. We've got massive debts. No record company is signing us. We've got no manager because our manager left as well. And we had, it was really difficult. And we used to say, all right, so, what else can we do? And we sort of say, well, maybe we could try and get some jobs in construction. Everyone needs houses. And Clive would say to me, well, what about some like bricklaying or something? That's a skill. We could maybe do that. So, yeah, maybe do some bricks. I said, how difficult can it be? He said, I don't know. It's going to be pretty much like just doing Lego, surely. Those little bricks. I don't know if you have them in America. They're like
the Lego, yeah, the little kid playing.
Toy plastic bricks.
Yeah.
And then we just start laughing, and then we'd be back on the horse, and I was very lucky to have a tremendous amount of support from Clive and Peter, because without them it would have been hard. Clive's girlfriend let me rent a room at their house, so I was nearer London, so I was able to go and visit record companies. And it was a very difficult time because I then had to go and do a bread round, at like 3:00 in the morning, and go off in a car which had a blown head gasket, and it was a very hard time. We owed a lot of money, and our fan base was starting to die off because, the prog rock, people called it a revival, and it was, I suppose. Some people said it's not a prog rock revival, but it was a really interesting progressive rock. And, you could see that if you were not going to start to be able to climb the ladder to get a bit more popular, you were going to fall by the wayside. And we were on the verge of falling by the wayside. And we very nearly, and we just didn't know what to do. Other bands like Palace and IQ and 12th Night, they had all got record deals. So they had managed to get, recording contract. Well, we were still, nowhere at all, apart from there was a guy we had earlier put out some albums through. I mean, when we first met Marillion, let's just be clear that their manager started a record label, and through him, we managed to release Fly High, Fall Far and The Jewel, which, there was no money in it, but it gave us an opportunity to make a record to sell to people who were interested. And it's a good job that John Arneson did that, because otherwise we would never have had something, released to give to the fans. So it was after that, things started to die off, and we thought, well, maybe this is the end, until we were going to record companies trying to get a deal. And there was a guy called David Munns from EMI who said, all right, what I'm going to do is I'll put you in the studio to go in to do a demo of a whole album, and then we'll come out and see if we like it. So we did. Everyone was going, wow, a whole album. No record company ever pays for a demo of a whole album. They're definitely interested if they do that. Well, we went and recorded Kauto, and then when we finished it and came out, as luck would have it, David Munns had left EMI and gone to Polydor, and the new guy at EMI was a guy called Nick Garvey, who was a violinist for the band Dex's Midnight Runners, who had become an A&R man. So we took our tape into him and said, look, David Munns has got us to do this tape, and we've had a sort of a connection with EMI for some time because we distributed with you, and he just listened to it and just went, nah, it's not my cup of tea. So that was another opportunity blown and a big kick in the teeth for us, and we were just absolutely desperate. But in the end, we were forced into, because there was nothing else to do. David Munn said, if we turn this tape down, which they did, you can keep the tape. And that then I took to a distribution company called Pinnacle. We'd had years and years and years of record companies saying, no, we don't want to sign you. No, you haven't got a front man that dresses up in a dress and a fox's head. You haven't got any hit singles. We're not interested, not interested, not interested. So we were so used to being rejected that we went to this distributor. It's a different kind of thing. They don't have to do the promotion. All they have to do is you give them the LPs and they sell them. And if they sell them, they take a percentage. So business-wise, it's a good deal for them. And I went to a girl called Maria Andre at Pinnacle. I said, look, we got this tape. We're thinking about putting out as an LP. Would you be interested? She said, well, have you got any proof of, any previous record sales? I said, yeah, we've had this LP out with John Arneson, Elusive Records, called The Jewel. And, here's one record statement for, the first 6 months of some sales that this was like, 5 years previously. We have this statement here for 10,000 albums. 10,000 albums? Yeah, we'll sign you.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it was a game changer, because we were then a bigger fish in a medium-sized sea, and we did extremely well with Pinnacle, and that was the way. We had our own record label, and from then on, we never looked back.
Yeah. Was it at the time you guys play at the Reading Festival? I think there were a lot of people there, like 20 or 30,000 folks attended at the time.
30,000 people were at Reading Festival.
Wow.
1983, we played there, which was terrifying because I went to Reading Festival as a fan in 1976 to see Camel and Rory Gallagher. And there was a band called the Sadista Sisters, and they were like second band on or something. And very inappropriate for that kind of audience, very, soul pop music, really. And they just got bottles hurled at them. And I can remember that, and I thought, oh, my goodness, if we don't go down well at Reading, we're going to get absolutely pelted. And so I was terrified. We all were terrified. But then when it came to it, nothing was thrown, and we had an amazing show. It was such a relief to come off that stage thinking, we've done it. We're okay. And then the producer of the Friday Rock Show, a guy called Tony Wilson, came backstage and asked us if we wanted to play on a session on the Friday Rock Show. And these things really helped us to, build a following. And so it was really exciting in the early 80s. But as I said, it was in the later 80s where things started to die off, that we couldn't get a record deal. We couldn't take things to the next level. And that was the difficult thing. And starting our own record label was like being given a new lease of life.
And I suppose that I imagine at the time, you guys, I don't know, ordered big quantities, 10,000 CDs, 10,000 vinyl or whatever, and you need to keep that kind of in the storage room. At the time where people were going to festival and buying, like we do nowadays, by selling T-shirts and selling CDs and albums, take a picture with the band, that kind of stuff, they were popular at the time, or?
Well, it was, all we had in Reading was tapes. We were doing tapes, and
Yeah.
merchandise wasn't quite so big then. I think we had a Reading T-shirt made and some tapes, and we might have sold a couple of £100 worth or something, but it wasn't the business that it is now. I mean, now, one of our main selling areas is the merchandise.
Merchandise, yeah.
That's how many bands survive, which is why over the last 3 years during COVID, it's been phenomenally difficult, because without being able to play live, you don't have the merchandise table to sell stuff. So it's very hard.
Yeah, now the business models have changed, right? So if a band, whatever, say, well, going to cost us, I don't know, £50,000 to record a new record and put it out there or whatever. How many shows we need to do in order to record and best return of merchandise, because the money, fewer and fewer people are buying. It's not my case, but they're buying CDs and vinyl, and you end up selling T-shirts, and meet and greets, or whatever. That's what you want to recover, that investment that you put into in creating a new album stuff, which is very difficult to get. And also after the first album, and the Jewel in '85, then what's happening between '85 and '88 or '91 when you did Kowtow and then The World? What's
well, all those things I just said about starting our own record label and being in the musical wilderness for between sort of '86 and, I mean, our keyboard player Rick Carter left, and Nigel had already left, and Matt Anderson, who stood in for one tour, he left, and then we got Fudge and another session keyboard player for one tour, but then Clive came along. And I got it. To me, it was a real defining moment, because we'd started the record label. I'd managed to get back the rights from EMI to the Jewel and Fly High Fall Far, and we'd done a live album called 915 through Awareness Records. But I'd managed to get the rights back and put them out on our own label. And luckily, CD was becoming popular. So, that gave us a new lease of life. And I got to the point where I just thought something has got to happen here. This is when me and Clive would be looking at, can we really carry this on? Because we're in a lot of debt. We're not getting out of it. It was quite a dark time for us. It was a very hard time, but I managed to raise enough money through the sales of the Jewel and 915 live on CD to pay myself a little bit of the money that I was owed, and I used that to go to America. And I stayed at a guy called Ken Welchoff's house in Hayward, California, with his family, and it was just incredible because him and a guy called Dan Clark and another guy called John Bonacera, we were hanging around a lot together, and the positive energy I got from those Americans was phenomenal. And this is California, very positive, and Ken was really upbeat, and we had a lot of fun. And I hadn't had a lot of fun like that for years, because we'd worked and worked and worked, and it was the Pendragon thing had become quite depressing. And suddenly you got California, with sunshine, pretty girls, and beaches, and wine coolers. I can remember these wine coolers. I just really, these great things, burritos. It was, and I'd previously got to know when he was still in the UK, Andy Latimer from Camel, and it was his wife, Susan Hoover, had actually said to me when we were in the UK, when I was complaining about the troubles we had, she said, you should start your own record label. And then by the time I went to America, we had started our own label. And so I met up with Andy and Susan Hoover again, and we talked about, because then Camel started Camel Productions, and so that's how that got started. And my trip to America was incredibly positive. So when I came back, everything changed. I was enthusiastic again. I'd had quite a bit of material already written. Then the song "The Voyager," it was already, I had the beginnings of it, but that started to really take shape. And the enthusiasm from America really spilt out into the World album, and then everything changed, because from that album onwards, we really found where we needed to go. We found a guy who we really liked the artwork for the cover.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing the kind of music we loved doing. We had the lineup was good, and we started to get more and more popular. And the rest of it, was a dream.
Got it. Got it. And then, in general term, what do you think that was the reason that early in the beginning, in the 80s, I suppose there were many new formation of Pendragon, right? One person will leave, another person will leave. The guy say, "No, this is not going anywhere. I need to get a job. I want to get married. I don't like the lifestyles." It was difficult, but at the same time, it's not that easy, I suppose, to find a new drummer, a new guitarist, a new person who play the keyboard to like your music, want to contribute to the band and be play in unison is not that easy, right? To find new members, So we like your stuff too,
Incredibly hard, because for the three reasons you said. I found a girl, I want to get married, I want a proper job. This isn't getting anywhere. People will leave. They haven't got the drive and the vision to see it through. And it's understandable. It's a damned hard life. There's no money. Like I said, 12 years it took me before I could pay myself something.
Wow.
And I just did crummy jobs, pumping gas, delivering bread, driving a van, working in warehouses and things like that, and just to keep it going. So we really wanted to do music, and so that was the focus. We had to do this. But then, of course, to get new people to join, they would see that we've been written about in the music press. So they thought, hey, this band is sort of like quite well known. So initially they thought, wow, this might be a good chance. So it was possible, like with Fudge and Clive, that was the best deal that they had at that time. No one else was playing at the Marquee or getting the press, from Kerrang or Sounds, so it looked like a really sweet deal. Yeah, they knew it's going to be hard work and like sleeping on people's floors and driving through the night in the van and all that kind of thing. But, they wanted to do music for a career. So, we were lucky we found Clive and Fudge.
People don't realize how difficult it is for band, especially at the beginning, right? For me, I go to concert, right?
It doesn't really, the difficulty comes around again in, various ways, because the thing is, it's not like a 9-to-5 job, like when I got divorced, things were in the way that stopped me really thinking creatively. I had to deal with, things that were very difficult. So I couldn't write any music or make an album. So we had no income. So sometimes it's not just kind of like one period of time and then it goes away. It's like the last 3 years as well. We've not been able to work for 3 years. But the thing is, we always say, well, we've been doing it for 45 years. We haven't starved to death yet. Something always comes up, and if you've got enough drive to keep going and a vision and a goal, you got a goal and you want to make music, you'll make it happen somehow.
Yeah, many times I go to concerts and I want to see a good show from 8 to 11 p.m. I don't care if the band have a good night's sleep or the flight was late or the band broke down, going from one city to another or argument around the trip it's very, and you will get paid, I don't know, $200 a person night or whatever. It's very difficult for many bands. And many bands, like you say, disappear. Many people say, well, the glamorous life of, I don't know, Eric Clapton or Genesis or Pink Floyd, the Led Zeppelin guy but many bands they don't even make minimum wage, and they do it because they love the music and they didn't go to school or whatever, and that's what they were born to do, I suppose. And it's very
yeah, but there's another aspect as well to it, is that you absolutely have to learn to be a businessman. If you don't, you won't make it work. Because, I mean, when I first took over from our manager, they basically came around with 2 boxes of bank statements, accounts, and said, there you are. And I had to learn, how to do all the things. And it was a long, hard slog. But there's another side of me which is able to do that. I've learned. If you can't do that, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Unless, of course, you've got a manager. But even then, when you've got a manager, you probably won't fully ever be able to understand how the business works. So if the manager ever goes, you're left in trouble. It's best to learn the business and learn some way of how you can make an income and what you can do, and this, that, and the other. I mean, the thing is, it's got to a point now where, in many ways, only wealthy artists can tour, because people say it's like Lorelei Festival. It's a festival in Germany. You get the headliners, Steve Hackett and Nick Mason's Sauce Full of Secrets. Well, yeah, of course, those guys, are getting paid a decent fee. But just about every band underneath them is getting virtually nothing. But the ones who, are at the bottom, who will go and play those, are happy to do it because they want the exposure. Now, they can only do it if they've got money from another income source, like, rich parents or a girlfriend who pays the bills, or they've got another job. And what you're seeing at the moment is that a lot of bands who are very active actually have no income from music, but they're putting their own music into their own money into doing it. And you're talking about huge amounts of money. I mean, I know bands that spend £40,000 on doing, they lose £40,000 on doing a tour because they want to be popular.
Well, yeah, you gotta stay home. Don't waste, quote unquote, the 40,000, or really follow your life and your dreams. And hey, 40 grand, if you're rich, they don't care. It's a lot of people, they don't have the money, so the COVID, right? Many people, many small bands disappear. They say, we cannot tour. The only money we can make is touring. Not touring, we better go to school and forget about music, and get a job.
I mean, it's a gamble, isn't it? Because if you keep trying, what I say is, look, my mantra is the same mantra as Winston Churchill: never, ever, 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 ever give up. You got to keep going, because somebody said to me once about 35 years ago. He said to me, this guy, he worked he used to press records in a record plant. He was in charge of it. And he said to me, somewhere in the world, people will want what you do. Somewhere. And I never forgot that. And, as it turned out, when we started to play more further afield, in places like France and Holland and Germany and Poland and Italy and Spain, I could start seeing that there was people who were buying our records, and they did want what we did. So, I would say to people, if you really want to do music, you've got to keep going. That's all you do. I think Frank Zappa said that as well. He just said, you're going to get knocked back. You're going to get really bad reviews. People are going to, call you all sorts of names. I mean, I don't even read reviews or what people say anymore. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. But, you're going to get very upset by what people say, and you've just got to keep going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. There was a 5-year gap, I think, between Masquerade and the next studio album, Not of This World. I imagine that with family thing, you were going through a divorce, was hard to put your mind to it, to write new song and messy stuff. It's always, happened to all of us, right? So it's hard to consider. But then again, after 5 years or so, you guys came back and Not of This World, and then back in the game again with, we're very good albums, so right?
Yeah. Like I said earlier, a lot of the things that happen, people have these rhythms, and some people have a different kind of rhythm. A lot of people, they go to work at 9 o'clock in the morning, they finish at 5 o'clock every day. They do that, and the problems they have, are every day, so they deal with them every day. With a lot of musicians, it's a much bigger cycle. And, when things are going well, they're usually going very well. And when they go bad, they go really bad. And so, when I was getting divorced, I couldn't really write much music or do the business side of things because I was dealing with, legal papers and divorce. It just, it's awful. It's a terrible thing, but it's a good experience looking back. You think, well, I learned some things about people during that. I mean, everything is for a reason. Everything is a lesson. But that's the way it goes. I mean, I'm not. What else am I going to do? I'm going to think, well, okay, I've got the divorce out of the way now. Come on, let's get on with a new album. That's what I want to do. I want to make music again and write and play, and keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. In '91, you you undertook one of the biggest tour you have done in Europe, right? And then you end up releasing and now everybody to the stage, a 2 CD and a DVD, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where in which countries were you playing? Most of the one you mentioned, Ireland, Scotland, and the UK, Germany, Italy.
Well, we've never played Ireland.
No, yeah.
I'd like to. We played Scotland quite a lot, but we went to Holland, Germany, France, Poland, Spain, Italy. They were the countries where we were starting to do very well.
Yeah, you guys, by the way, you're very popular in Latin America. You know that, and people, Argentina, Chile, Mexico. A lot of people in Latin America like prog rock.
I know.
You guys, or Camel, or Gone, or Genesis, or they do very well.
When we've played there, we've absolutely loved it. I mean, it's been incredible. We were going to play there a couple of years ago before the whole lockdown thing kicked in. We were lined up to come and play in Chile and Brazil. We wanted to play in Argentina, but we couldn't, for financial reasons, couldn't get that to work, unfortunately. But Latin America for us, when we have come over there, has been phenomenal. Absolutely brilliant. I'd love to come back and play there. I really would.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In 2009, you end up accepting the Classic Rock Society Album of the Year award for Pure. That correct?
I think so.
Yeah. You're very well. That was a big deal. I mean, you were, easy for me to say, but for struggle to record label, selling your own stuff, make a little bit of money, flying to the United States, and then some award were coming that way and another one.
It's incredibly nice to be recognized.
Yeah, to be recognized, right?
For your work, yeah. I mean, and it's always something which is very welcome, when that comes along.
Yeah. Were you, at the time Blu-ray were not around, but DVDs, and band will say, well, it's another source of income, right? So it's this buying all the time, obviously CD and releasing DVDs. You end up releasing, I think, a live album called Concerto Mexico in 2008 that was filmed. And I think you guys, I don't know how many, I don't know if you saw a lot of them or not, but I have some of them they're very, very good, actually. I was preparing questions for this review. I listened to most of your stuff and some of the DVDs, and I see very good quality. Very, very good music, very cohesive band. Why not many people in the world like this band? You know what I mean?
There was a guy called Tommy Jabinski from Poland who, really helped us a lot with the DVDs. We made 4 or 5 DVDs with Metal Mind, the company from Poland, which was great because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to do it because making a DVD is so expensive. But they came along and said, no, we'll do everything, you pay for the lights, the recording, the editing, everything. So, it made it possible for us to do. And I was very happy to make those DVDs with Metal Mind. They were very, very good. I liked, and Tommy was a good friend of mine. He became a very good friend of mine. And, we did a lot of work together for Pendragon shows. That was great.
That's great. And then after the album Pure, the album Passion was released in 2011 and Follow Men Who Climb Mountains. More different, they were more darker, more progressive metal, if you will, right? They were different from the previous one. What was the kind of, if you don't mind, the motivation of doing things differently, right? Under a rock, but different flavor of different things. If you enjoy it, right?
Well, I got to 2000 and after Not of This World, I thought, well, we've done sort of grandiose prog thing. I just didn't really have any more ideas in that vein, and I loved it, and I still love that kind of music. But I was doing a lot of motocross at the time with my son, and we were watching motocross videos, DVDs, and a lot of the music that was contained within these DVDs was a lot of new metal. And I thought, I really like this. This is very melodic, but it's heavy, but it's very melodic. And I thought, maybe we could incorporate some of these new and different influences in our music to try and bring something new to the table. And, so creatively, it was a lot of fun to bring in something new. And I enjoyed doing that for a while, and it just meant that there was a different flavor for a few albums, and we weren't doing the same thing over and over again. But I sort of like with Love Over Fear and North Star to go back to the old style again, because I that's what I felt like doing. I got a bit fed up with doing the heavy stuff. I wanted something that just was beautiful again, had some beauty. And I thought, well, the albums that I like, from the 70s, I'd like to maybe have something which has that kind of feel again, because so much music has become about the social standing rather than the actual songs. And I wanted it to be about the actual melody and the music. I mean, the albums that I liked, Trick of the Tail, Steve Hackett, Voyage to the Acolyte, Camel Moon Madness, Pink Floyd. And I thought, and a lot of other stuff like Neil Young, a lot Steely Dan. To me, those still are the best albums, the best sounding albums. And I wanted to make albums that had that kind of vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. The album I was listening last night to Low Over Fear, right? This album from 2020, 3 years ago, which is unbelievable. I read somewhere you guys sold that album. It sold very well, right? It was the biggest grossing album ever for you guys.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yes, it was very popular. I mean, what happened with a lot of albums about, say, maybe 10 years ago is after 6 weeks, they would just stop selling. The 6 week window, we used to call it. But Love Over Fear, even 3 years on, it's still selling pretty well, which is fantastic. But it really kind of hit it off with people that liked, that kind of very typical sound in the 70s, of Trick of the Tail, Moon Madness.
Ooh.
That album is perfect for those kind of listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you released a great album. People start liking it. Okay, we should start touring. And then, boom, pandemic hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another nightmare, So my world, man, so difficult. You have something good to sell and to offer to the public, touring, and then the pandemic, and couldn't do it anymore. Yeah.
No, it was a nightmare. Obviously, we had to come back halfway through the tour. We did a show in Poland and then just had to cancel the rest of the tour and come home. We tried to postpone it to the following year. That was still no good, and postpone it the following year after that. But the thing is, people think, well, it's all over now, you can go back on tour. But the problem is the fallout from those 3 years has been very damaging, because what people don't realize is that you can't just get in a bus and go. It takes you 1 year to organize a tour. So you're working, organizing, flights, organizing the tour bus, organizing the crew, rehearsals, set list. You're sorting food out for people. You're talking about, all the things, accommodation while we rehearse, transport to get to. There's a million logistics to sort out. And it's just me and my wife do that. Nobody else, just me and my wife. And so, we're not doing another job while we're doing that. We're doing just that. So if you have done all that for 1 year and then the tour gets cancelled, you haven't even had the income from that tour. So that's another year where you've had no income. So the last 3 years have been phenomenally difficult to try and keep the whole thing going. We have to try and build back up to it again, because some bands, like I said before, there are some bands who didn't care whether they lose any money because they can afford to do it. So they don't care whether it gets cancelled to come home, or maybe they only play to a couple of hundred people. They don't. It doesn't matter. But the thing is, if you have a tour that's cancelled because the singer has got COVID and you're in a tour bus for 10 days, that tour bus is costing you £1,700, call it $2,000 a day.
Wow.
And it's sat in a lay-by and you're not earning anything. That ain't going to work for very long. So you have to do what we did last time, which was 3 weekends. So there was a fire break between each weekend. So if something did happen, we could rethink how we were going to go about things. And now we're looking at, doing touring again properly. I just hope that, we can make that happen.
Yeah. And at the same time,
we've really gone up. The cost of the tour bus, fuel.
Exactly right. Yeah.
It's all more expensive. But we're only being offered the same fee as we were 3 years ago. So we have to try and make this work in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we, with the pandemic, we hit recession over the world. A lot of people lost their jobs. So people you were counting on attending show, they say, man, $50, £100 to go to a gig, man, maybe I cannot, I cannot afford to do that. So, it had been very difficult for many, many families the last 3 years. Yeah, just many people lost their job, and band disappeared with very difficult situation all over the world. But it's unbelievable. And you were, always a lot of people think that it's easy to be a musician, but it's very hard, because in your case, you were like the tour manager, the manager. You need to be a tough boss and putting everything together. Maybe 10% is the great music. The other 90% is paperwork, headache, organizing tour.
That's exactly right.
So it's 10% music.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. I mean, 90% of what we do regarding a concert is nothing to do with the actual music. It's to do with I mean, look, it took me a year and a half to actually find the two backing singers that we have who could do what we needed to do. So there was all that kind of toing and froing, and could they learn the music, learning, rehearsing, finding new people, new crew people, because they get fed up and leave, so you need that. Constantly organizing tour buses, food, accommodation. Like I said before, I always say you're not so much a musician as you're a psychologist, you're a banker, you're a babysitter, you're a caterer, you're a hotelier, and as Fish said, you're a haberdasher, because most of what you do is selling T-shirts. Right. There are all these things. I mean, like, you get the T-shirt comes on, it's got the wrong design on it because somebody screwed up somewhere. This stuff just goes on and on and on and on. But we're kind of used to it. It's what we've always done. So, we love doing music. So this is what we have to do, and it's okay most of the time. But you do get times where it is unbelievably stressful. What they see is bands who are successful. All you ever see is the success of bands. 99% of the bands that people who like prog rock do not do this for a living. It's an illusion. Those bands like to look like they're professional musicians, but it's a hobby. I guarantee you, there are very, very, very few bands who can make a living out of music. I mean, there's me, Mick Pointer, Marillion, Fish, Stephen Wilson. They're the big ones. Yeah. John Young, that guy is an absolute trooper when it comes, and very few others. Very, very few. That's the reality. But when you read the magazines, you think they're all living in castles,
drinking champagne every day and eating caviar.
Yeah, which Clive Nolan does, of course. But
some people do. Yeah, it's. What would be the advice for young people? If you were given advice to yourself, 17, 18-year-old, that want to follow the music career, and prog rock in general is very difficult to make a living. On top of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, what would you do? My son Max wanted to get into music at one stage, and he went to college, and he was very good, actually. Very good guitarist, very good on the piano, and a very good writer. He wrote some very good songs, but it wasn't really for him. But he did say he went to college for about 6 months, and I said to him, I'll tell you two things about being a musician. One thing, I'll give you some advice. One thing, don't go anywhere near progressive rock. And secondly, always be the singer of your band. Because if you're in a band where you have to get in a singer, but you're the main driving force, it'll be a nightmare. Because singers are always a pain in the neck. So always make sure that you are the singer. But my advice to young bands is that if you really want to be a musician, you've got to keep on going. You're going to get knocked back time and time and time again. You've just got to, be fed up about it. I've been fed up about illegal downloading, P2P file sharing. I was really upset about that for a year. But then once that's gone, you've got to say, okay, well, now we've got to actually change something and we've got to find a way of making this work. So I would say to people, you're going to get knocked back, but you've got to keep on trying if you really want it. And you've got to have unbelievable drive and vision. You've got to have a goal. You've got to have a vision. You've got to have a way of making that work. But I'm old school. There are young guys out there who are monetizing what they're doing. They're making YouTube content. They're making YouTube videos. They're able to use the internet in different ways that I couldn't even begin to imagine. So there are new ways always coming along that younger guys can make it work.
To make a good living doing the thing that you do like. What is? Have two more questions. What's upcoming tour? You're planning something for toward the end of the year, or like they do like a 3-weekend, like a weekend thing 3 days, like Marillion type, Friday, Saturday, Sunday retreat where you don't have to go from one city to another, right?
We're hoping to do some touring next year, hopefully a European tour, maybe a couple of weeks. See how that goes. Maybe a few other things if they come along. If we get offered something, we'll try and make sure we do it. I mean, I'm starting to think about a new album now as well. So, there's that. Yeah.
What about the United States? Or is not possible? Prohibited for the cost, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, just to get visas now is about £750 each person. If you've got 13 people with the band and the crew, it's just like who's going to pay that? It's phenomenally expensive to tour, and it's even more expensive to tour. If a promoter turned around and said, I want to do a 50-day tour of America, we'll cover all your costs for doing it, I'd say we would do it like a shot. But I'm knowledgeable enough to know that, there are not enough people to be able to financially attend the shows to make it financially viable. So it can't happen. I mean, we in South America, we can, because there's a couple of promoters. They say, hey, Chile, we're going to get 500 people and that, that were X dollars, that was, we can, we were being offered a very, very small fee to go and play in South America. But I thought, well, if we can cover the flights and it keeps things going, and, so maybe a couple of weeks before and a couple of weeks after, we'll do another show somewhere, that'll help pay. That's how it worked before the pandemic. One show would pay for another.
The next one, yeah.
It's like a little microclimate. This show we sold some T-shirts, so that'll help pay the. I mean, we played in Japan, and I had to pay for all the flights, and the guy over there who put us on, the guys from Marquee, they very kindly paid for some amazing food and the venue, and they paid for our hotels, but I had to pay for the flights. And you have to say, well, it's an investment. You go to Japan and you have this thing which is, going to consolidate your relationship with your fans.
Yeah.
That's gold. That's gold. I mean, we could go and play in Argentina and lose, maybe a few $1,000s, but it's gold, because I know we're consolidating our relationship with those people, and they'll say, hey, okay, we'll buy the next album when it comes out because we want to support you. So it's like a microclimate.
Absolutely.
Something else. It's not kind of like, go to Argentina, get paid $20,000. Yeah, great. That's not going to happen. it's going to be, well, we need to bring a few other factors in.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely, man. Feel free to elaborate or mention your YouTube channel and your website where people can buy music and support you, where the tours are going to be announced, that kind of stuff. So feel free to mention.
Oh yeah, it's www.pendragon.mu will get you to most places you want to go. Tour dates and links to the shop. The Burning Shed is the mail order.
Burning Shed,
we use for selling stuff in mail order. So that's where stuff's available.
Yeah, all right. Nick, it was very nice talking to you, man. Hopefully I go to Europe, London for work-related stuff like 2 times a year. So hopefully we can meet up for, I don't know, coffee, beer, or whatever, or wine, and we can get together. It was very nice talking to you, man. Good luck to you, and
thank you very much.
Keep on the fight, man. Keep on fighting, keep on touring. There's a lot of people out there that really love your stuff, and me included, some of my friends. It's progressive rock, small niche, and people don't buy CDs anymore. But well, if you need to do it, meet and greet or the 3-day weekend, or the selling T-shirts, like the fish guy will say, and it's you need to do what you need to do to
you got to do what you got to do.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, man. It was very nice talking to you, man. Take it easy, man.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
No problem.
Bye bye.